Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and good afternoon to all the participants. So please do, before I begin, please do post your questions in the chat session so that I will be able to answer at the end of the session. So the plan is just for first hour, for the first 1 hour, we will see the concepts, and later Ms. Sujitra will take you to the tutorial. So where you will have some hands-on experience of using the tools that we are introducing in this session. So to begin with, so the topic that we have to discuss, or we are going to discuss today, is power system stability and nonlinear perspective. So as you see here in the title slide, you can see that this concept of nonlinearity, or otherwise more glamorously the concept of chaos, came from what is known as the Lorentz system, or the Lorentz butterfly. That is what you are seeing there. So you can just go through what Lorentz said about nonlinearity. So usually we tend to ignore the nonlinear terms. However, we have to realize that it is not so easy to ignore the nonlinear terms. They will continue to linger. Now, again, to quote from the famous book or popular science book on chaos. So usually we learn solvable systems, and the solvable systems are mostly linear systems. And even if we learn something nonlinear, we will try to approximate or do some kind of an approach wherein we will make the nonlinear system into a linear system and then solve. So we will see today why that approach may not be sufficient, or why we will require the nonlinear perspective, especially in the case of power system. So considering the demography of audience, what I have planned is that I will be introducing the concepts in nonlinear dynamics initially, and then we will see how we can apply, or how we have applied it in the power system models. So now if you take a traditional power system, so you have a very centralized system there. So you have a generation, then you have distribution. So you have very well defined centralized system. Now, as many of you may be aware, or better aware than me, so we are moving from that traditional system to a modern power system, or a future power system, or sometimes which is also called as a smart grid, wherein you have a decentralized scheme. That is, you have generations at multiple points, and then they are communicating with each other. So what you are actually creating is, you have a lot of subsystems that are being created. So two things that we can note in the case of a modern power system, which I think during this particular workshop, many of the eminent speakers have already introduced, that is the penetration of renewable energy into the power grid. That is one point. So that is also going to have one implication. That is the reason why I am stating that specifically. And also this decentralized nature brings in more interaction. So what you have here now is, you have multiple systems which are interacting with each other. So when you have multiple systems interacting with each other, you call such a system wherein multiple systems interact, and because of the interaction you have some properties which may not be pertinent, or which may not be specific to a particular subsystem. So such systems you call by the name complex systems. So these complex systems, why this approach is important, because what may happen in a system where many subsystems are interacting, it is just like you have this multiple subsystems in a power grid which is interacting. So a failure in one of the subsystems can immediately result in a cascading failure for the entire power system, and it can create a blackout situation. So if you are analyzing each subsystem separately, you may be missing this particular phenomenon that might happen. Whereas this phenomenon is an emergent phenomenon which comes because of the interaction of different subsystems. And the viewpoint of or this perspective of seeing them as complex system, or more traditionally they are called as dynamical systems because systems which change with respect to time. So that is the simplest possible definition. So you say such dynamical systems, they are prone to what is known as catastrophic transitions, and power systems are not an exception. And this is the major problem that we are going to face in the modern power systems. So how do you avoid such catastrophic transition when you are bringing in more and more renewable energy, when you are bringing in more decentralization? How do you deal with this catastrophic transition? So why we say catastrophic transition, etc., I will tell in a moment. So basically, it is like you are moving from a desirable state to an undesirable state. For example, if your power system is operating very well, everything is going fine, you are getting uninterrupted power, that may be your desirable state. So suddenly your power system fails completely. So you may enter into a blackout state. So that is an undesirable state. So this is what we in simple terms call as transition. So how we will see how we study this transition or how we can do this. So why these transitions are important? Because you can see that here, just imagine, you need not pay attention to exactly which system it is. Instead of that, you just imagine this. You are changing some parameter, maybe like you are doing in a laboratory, you are doing an experiment, you are changing the parameter. So since the parameter which is changed is the independent one, you take it along the x-axis, as we all know, and you are measuring something observable, something that you are measuring from the system, which you are depicting in the y-axis. Now what happens, as you change the parameter, the quantity that you are observing, the measure, that is coming down. That is what you see in the top black line. So what in all probability we assume is that this black line continues like this. However, when the black line reaches a specific point, or when your parameter, which you are controlling, when it reaches a specific point or a specific threshold, then you actually transit from this black line to the bottom black line. From the upper branch to the lower branch, you transit, or otherwise your system tips from the upper branch to the lower branch. And this tipping, usually we call it as the critical transition. So this is universal. This can be seen in different systems, not only in power systems. You can see in society, you can see in civilization, you can see in ecosystem, you can see it in stock market. So it is a transition that can be observed in different dynamical systems. And of course, this will be observed in power system also. So I will be explaining more about this plot, which is coming from a power system model during this tutorial itself. So one important aspect that you need to note here is as it is mentioned in the title, a tiny perturbation can produce a large transition. So it is not that a large perturbation happens. So for example, if I just take a rudimentary example to help make you people understand, let us say that we are measuring the vitals of some person who is eating or who is in the habit of eating sweets. So say that he is eating 1 laddu, 2 laddu, 3 laddus per day, 4 laddus he is increasing, 5 laddus, till we are seeing his blood sugar, everything is well within the control, no problem. However, when he crosses a threshold, then from his healthy state, he just get transited to the state of having uncontrollable blood sugar. So, and most often the problem is, if you get transited to that, even if you stop eating laddus from the next day, you may not make your blood sugar back to your original value. So that is where lies the problem. That is, even once you tip, then it is very difficult for you to bring the system back to its original state. So that is the one aspect which makes this transition catastrophic. And it is just a tiny nudge from the point where you have reached the threshold. So it just requires a push for you to go to the other stable state. So that is where this nonlinear stability analysis becomes very important. Now, this transition, so one way it need not be catastrophic, so you are lucky. That means in this transition, if you see the figure that you are seeing currently, what happens is that you are changing the condition, your system state is changing, and as soon as the condition has reached a point, and if you make a tiny change in the condition, there is a sudden change in the system. So the system just goes to the other stable state. However, you have the option of making the system go back. Just you reverse the condition. Maybe it is like one load has increased somewhere, or if your generation has gone down in some of the renewable sources. So if you just make it revert, then you will get back to your stable state easily. However, if you are unfortunate, then most often, you know the Murphy's law, so you often encounter what is known as a catastrophic transition. So here what happens, you get transited from one stable state which is desirable to the other stable state which may not be desirable. And even if you try to change the condition, so here in this picture, even if you reduce the condition, you will not get back immediately to the upper branch. You need to reduce the condition so far, and then only you have the chance to go back to the upper branch. So that is where this transition becomes actually a problem for you. That is in the sense that you have to really worry about this transition, because once it happened, then you have to really work hard to bring the system back to the desirable state. So now going further, how can we model these complex systems? For example, if the modern power grid, as I stated earlier, if it is representing a complex system which is consisting of interacting subsystems, and if it is vulnerable to such catastrophic transitions, how do I model such system? So that is the first point. And again, the second point will be, how do I analyze data from such system? So these are the questions that we will be addressing in a minimal level in today's lecture. So now what we need to use is what is known as the dynamical system theory. So this is a very interesting topic. So especially if you are an undergrad, I know that like when I did my dynamical system theory course in IIT Madras, I had several undergrad friends, and incidentally from electrical engineering background. So my professor was telling me that please note this fact that these guys who are sitting along with you, they are not just going to apply this theory to electrical engineering. Some of them are going to apply this to finance, and some of them want to go to some of the top class financial institutions. So if you are an undergrad and if you have interest in this theory, then you have a very vast set of opportunities waiting for you, and of course for other graduate and post PhD or postdoctoral researchers as well. Now, what is this dynamical system theory? So I am making it very simple, considering again the fact that it is a mixed audience. So for some of my audience, this may be a non-fact, so I will request you to pardon me. And so if you take the famous equation, which is the RLC equation, or it is otherwise known as the MKC equation, if you are coming from the mechanical engineering background, you say the spring mass and damper system, or in your electrical engineering, you have the resistor, capacitor, inductance circuit. So you write this second order linear differential equation. So you all can understand that this is a second order equation because the highest order is second, and it is a linear equation because you don't have any nonlinear terms here. So just we use this equation to learn what is dynamical system theory. Suppose that I want to know, finally, when I make a differential equation, my aim is to know how the system will behave. I want to know, otherwise I want to know the solution of the differential equation, which traditionally we say we have to write x of t. So you have to get x of t. So once you know x of t, that means you have solved your differential equation. Dynamical system theory gives you a tool or introduces a concept wherein you can actually solve this or understand the behavior of the system even without explicitly solving it. And it dates back to the famous mathematician Henry Poincaré. So here what we do is that we just split this second order differential equation into two first order equations. So what I am going to do is that I am going to introduce two variables, that is x1 and x2, and I am going to say that this x1 dot is nothing but x2, that is dx1 by dt is equal to x2, and x2 dot, which is actually x1 double dot. So x1 can be taken as our x, so x1 double dot, that x1 double dot, which is now represented as x2 dot. So you know, from this equation, if you take every other term to the opposite side, then you get it as x2 double dot, x double dot equal to minus b by m x dot minus k by m x. So now you are going to solve two linear differential equations, x1 dot equal to x2 and x2 dot equal to minus b by m x2 minus k by m x1. So what you will do is that you will just equate these two equations to 0 in order to know the asymptotic behavior of the system, which means there is no change in x1, there is no change in x2. So that will give me the asymptotic state of the system. And once I do that, I can find out the solution for the system. Similarly, I can approach a nonlinear system. So this is a nonlinear system. You know that we have done the simple pendulum equation in high school, and we always assume that this sin x is very small, the x is small, so that sin x can be approximated to x. So that is the backdoor approach that I was talking about in the beginning. So otherwise, you just take x1 dot equal to x2 and x2 dot equal to minus g by L sin x1. Now imagine that after making this equation, you are just viewing this system, this simple pendulum, nonlinear pendulum, in a space that is called as phase space, or otherwise it is called as the state space, which is created by the variables x1 and x2. And you are asking how the system is going to behave in that state space. So this is the whole idea about dynamical system theory. So you are going to see what is going to happen to the system in the state space. So instead of solving the system explicitly, so we will see that one example we will see. So again, you can do it for this, even if it is a forced oscillator, you can do it. So the forced oscillator is important as far as our tutorial is concerned. I will tell you later when we reach that part. So why we require such an approach? So just let us see that. Suppose that we have a function x dot equal to f of x, and let it be a very simple function x dot equal to sin x. So let us say that we want to solve this differential equation x dot equal to sin x. So you know that. So I am not going to bore you. I know that this is a ghost hour. So if I try solving a differential equation at this time, I know what will be the response. And I hope that WebEx has the features of monitoring how many of you are really into the screen, etc. So maybe your organizers will send me those statistics, or they may use those statistics to decide whether they should call me again or not. So I will not go in detail of the solution. Instead, I will just tell you this will be, if you solve this entire differential equation using your variable separable, this is what you are going to get. Finally, you solve the differential equation, you express t in terms of x or x in terms of t, you get that. Now, after solving this, if there is a question, that is, if somebody is asking what is going to happen to this system, that is where the system will end up. Suppose that if I start with an initial condition, you all may be aware of what is an initial condition. So if it is a first order equation, we require at least one initial condition to solve the problem, to know this constant. So if some initial condition just like x naught is here, so we say that this x naught is some pi by 2 or pi by 4. If we start with that, what will happen to this system? So we may be wondering, you have to again go back here and then understand. So it is not that easy or not that intuitive when we are solving. And luckily we have a solution for this nonlinear differential equation. And believe me, most of the nonlinear equations, you will not find solutions that easily. So you have to go for numerical approach. So now let us take this dynamical system approach. What I am doing here, as I stated earlier, I am drawing a space like x and x dot. I am introducing in two variables. So then what I am just plotting x dot, I know it is sin x. So x dot is as sin x I am plotting. So you can see that x dot is sin x. We all know how sin x will look like. So it is a very simple thing. Now you look at these points where I have marked the white and black circles. So you can immediately see that the white and black circles correspond to points where x dot is 0. X dot is 0. So imagine that it is you are flowing in a river or you are flowing in a channel, and this x dot is like your velocity. So whenever x dot is 0, that means you will not flow. Suppose if I start with x equal to 0, then what is going to happen? My sin x will be 0. Sin 0 is 0. So x dot is 0. So you will ever remain in x is equal to 0. Similarly, if I start with pi, it is going to happen. 2 pi, it is going to happen. So any n pi, it is going to happen. That means immediately when I did this approach, I immediately understand one thing, that if my initial condition is n pi, then I am going to stay in that point forever. That is the first level of understanding. However, if you dive deep into this picture, you can understand one more thing. Suppose that we started with x is equal to 0. So you are right at this origin. Your x dot is also 0. However, we know that our nature is not devoid of fluctuations. Because of some fluctuations, you just tend to move a little bit towards right. So when you move towards right, what happens? Your x dot is becoming positive. So I told you already, you can view this like a velocity. So x dot is positive means your velocity is positive. That means you are going to further go in the x direction, positive x direction. So you are going further away and away from your initial direction. Suppose if the reverse happens, you are here at the origin, a slight perturbation takes you towards the left. Then what happens? Your x dot becomes negative and you will again keep on going away from your initial point. Now we all learned in high school about an equilibrium point which talks about keeping a marble on top of a hill, and if you just touch the marble, it will go towards the either side of the hill. So we call such an equilibrium point as a unstable equilibrium point. So this is called as an unstable fixed point. So if your system, if your dynamical system or the physical system that you are modeling or physical system that you are handling is having such a point, which means that the system will easily go away from this point. It will never settle here, because for a physical system, this always there will be some fluctuation because of which you will move away from the unstable fixed point. So although at this point your x dot is 0, you cannot remain at that point because that is an unstable fixed point. Now come to these black dots. So what will happen here? If you perturb the system a little bit towards right, you will go there, but you see what is happening to x dot. X dot, sign of x dot is negative. That means the velocity is negative. That means you will come back to your black dot again. And similarly, if somebody is perturbing you towards the left, then again you can see that you will come back to the black dot again. So what is happening here? So this is like keeping our marble in a valley. So whatever perturbations that you give, you will come back to your state. That means it is a stable fixed point. So your dynamical system can have an unstable fixed point. Similarly, it can have a stable fixed point. And one more thing that we can note, suppose that you give any initial condition starting from 0 to 2 pi, let it be any initial condition. What is your final state? It is going to be pi. So I have not solved the differential equation. So do you understand or do you realize? I hope you can appreciate the beauty. So I am not solving the differential equation, but even without solving the differential equation, now I know that the final state, the asymptotic state of my system is pi if I start anywhere between 0 to 2 pi. I call this 0 to 2 pi as the basin of attraction of this fixed point. So now what is the use of all this in a physical system? Physical system, if we are able to model it, if we are able to make a model, then if you can understand the basin of attraction of your stable state against a parameter, then you know that if your parameter and if your initial condition is from this range to this range, your power system is going to remain stable and it will ever be in this particular state. There can be transients, but asymptotically you will reach that state. Similarly, you can also see that this, whatever the open circles, you will never be there, you will always move away from there. So they are acting actually like some separation points from two stable states. For example, if your initial condition is anything below 0, then you will go to the minus pi, and if it is anything above 0, you will go to pi. However, you should also note that if I perturb the system too much, that is, if I perturb it such that I will keep it, kick it, and it goes to the negative side, then it will not come back to pi, it will go to minus pi. That means if I kick the system out of the basin of attraction, then the system will go to the alternate stable state. So this is what you need to know in order to know about transitions in power systems. So we will see all equivalents there. So now going further, so this way you can make any first order system. If you make a plot x dot with respect to x, you can find out the stable states and unstable states for that system. Okay, so now there is a beautiful phenomenon that is called as bifurcation. So what is this has to do with this picture? So we all might have seen that if there is a column, that is, if we keep something that is a flexible road kind of thing, if you keep loading the road, then the road will start buckling. Now when it buckles, it can either buckle to the left or it can buckle to the right. So it can buckle to any direction. And what is happening, when will it start buckling? When your weight is reaching a critical value. That means before the weight reached the critical value, the behavior of the system was different. And when the weight reached the critical value, any additional weight is now changing the behavior of the system. So the qualitative change in the behavior of a system for an infinitesimal change in its parameters, we call that by the name bifurcation. Okay, so we will see some specific examples. So let us take a simple example. If I have a mathematical model which is given by x dot is equal to r plus x square. Okay, so it's a one-dimensional model. So you may wonder, why am I talking about one dimension, etc. I will tell you what is the reason. Like maybe when we reach the end of the tutorial, I will be able to explain that. So let us take x dot is equal to r plus x square. So r is like some external parameter or your system parameter, and x is your state space variable. So x dot is telling you the differential equation or the rule for increase or decrease of your state space variable. So you know x dot is equal to r plus x square. So if you are good at plotting functions, then you would have understood that if any function f of x equal to c plus x square, c can be any constant, it will appear something like this depending upon whether c is positive or negative. If c is negative, it will be like this when r is less than 0. When r is equal to 0, it is like plotting x dot equal to x square. It will be like this, the second picture that you see. And when you are, just a second, just me take the pointer. Okay, so when r is less than 0, it will be like this. When r is equal to 0, it will be like the second picture. When r is greater than 0, this will be like this. So now if you look at each of these condition, we already saw that the equilibrium states of the system will be there when this x dot is 0. That means that is the asymptotic state that the system can reach, because there is no change in the value of x. That will happen when x dot is crossing this x-axis, that is when it is becoming 0. So you can see that there are two states for r less than 0. There is one state for r equal to 0. There is no such state existing for r greater than 0. So that means what the system is going to do, suppose if you are doing an experiment where you are changing your r from negative value to positive value, then you can see here that when your r was negative, let it be minus 10, minus 5, whatever, then you can see that your system will finally settle to this black dot. Whatever may be your initial condition, it will settle here. And if your initial condition is well beyond this basin of attraction, it will go to some other point. Now, when you are changing your r value, and as you reach your r equal to 0 also, then it settles down to another point. But as soon as you reach r greater than 0, then what happens? There is no point to which your system is settling. So it is just going away. There is no equilibrium point for you. So whatever the equilibrium point that you had here, it has gone away. So you can see this in another way also. You had an unstable equilibrium here. You have a stable equilibrium here. They two coalesce at this point and none of them exist here. So now, in order to depict this properly, we will draw what is known as a bifurcation diagram. So what is a bifurcation diagram is basically, we are just getting what is x dot, which is equal to r minus x square. So you get the roots of this equation, that is you equate it to 0, r minus x square equal to 0. So x square is equal to plus or minus root r, you know. And when r is negative and when r is positive, you are trying to get these roots. That's what you are trying to do. Okay. So what you are trying to do here is that you can see here when r is negative, you will always be in this line, in this black line. So this is an unstable line, so you cannot remain there. So numerically or theoretically it is possible, but practically if you are there, fluctuations will push you to this black line. So you will ever be here. And when r becomes positive, nothing is there for you. So this is known as the saddle node bifurcation, or otherwise it is known as blue sky catastrophe. So why it is called blue sky catastrophe means this r equal to greater than 0, that part is like a blue sky. So from nowhere you get a stable and unstable solution. And you can find that in real systems, in real power systems, you find such conditions appear. That is, a stable state and unstable state coalesce and nothing else is existing. So this is known as a normal form equation. Similarly, you can also find another normal form equation which is known as x dot, or which is responsible for another bifurcation, that is called as transcritical bifurcation. So it is called rx minus x square. So in this bifurcation, the understanding is always there is a root, that is x is equal to 0. At x is equal to 0, always x dot is 0. So that always exists. And there are two roots depending upon the value of r equal to x square. So what is happening? For r less than 0, you have two roots existing. The left one is unstable, right one is stable. Now when r becomes 0, there is only one root. When r is greater than 0, what happens? The right one becomes stable and the left one becomes unstable. So if you are just using the same methodology, then this is what is happening. So you should imagine it like this. There is a straight line when x is equal to 0, that is one root, and x is equal to r is another root, that is this line, that is this slanting line, 45-degree line. So what is happening? As you are changing the parameter r, you are moving this, you are always in this stable state, that is x is equal to 0 state. The moment you reach the critical value of r, which is at 0, what happens? Your stable state, which is x is equal to 0, becomes unstable, and the previously unstable state, there what is happening, that is becoming stable now. So there is a transfer of stability. So what is the importance of this? Suppose that your power system can work in two different states. Imagine that your power system can work in two different states. One state represented by this bottom line, one state represented by this 45-degree line. What will happen is, if you are changing some of your power system parameters, you are here. So if you do not know this diagram, then you will think that, okay, I am going to continue in this line. So I am going to continue in this stable state. Suddenly what might happen, there can be a transition that can come up, or you can experience that bifurcation, and you will get transited, your system will get transited to the alternate stable state. So usually in engineering, we say that it is instability. So it is in an engineering parlance, it is called as instability. From a physics perspective, this state also can be stable. Okay, the state as such is stable, but for engineers, for example, if you take a bridge, there are suspension bridges all over the world, and these suspension bridges are prone to vibration. So what will happen is that if the wind velocity is increasing and reaching a threshold, then these suspension bridges will start vibrating. So according to a physicist, the bridge, when it is not vibrating, is stable, and when it is vibrating, it is also stable oscillation. But we engineers, we say that when the bridge is not vibrating, it is stable. But when it is vibrating, we call it as unstable. Why? Because we create solutions for people. So we don't want a vibrating bridge. So we cannot call that it is. So if you tell your company that the bridge is now also in a stable state, or your power grid is now also in a stable state, but it is oscillating, probably you will get the transition from your job to jobless state. You will be moving, right? So for engineers, it is actually instability. Now, I will just skip these two things for want of time, and I will directly go to what is known as the oscillatory instabilities, because that is what is more interesting for the problem that we have taken up. So I will directly go there. So there are something called as Hope bifurcations, wherein the system will transit from no oscillation to oscillations. Okay, and there are two types of Hope bifurcations. One is called as a supercritical Hope bifurcation. So in a supercritical Hope bifurcation, what happens? Your system will always, there will be some initial perturbation. So there can be some transients. This transient will die out if your parameter is less than a critical value. This mu is your system parameter, something that you are changing or something that is changed naturally. Now, when mu reaches the mu c value, and if it is increasing, then what happens? Suddenly oscillations will take place. So you will get transited from a no oscillatory state to oscillatory state. So what is happening actually is you have a fixed point in what is known as the state space or phase space. So all trajectories will come to this fixed point when mu is less than 0. When suddenly mu becomes greater than 0, your fixed point, I told you that it can change from black to white, stable to unstable. So your fixed point changes from a valley to a hill. So it becomes unstable. And where these trajectories will go, now they are going to go to another route there in the phase space, which we call it as the limit cycle. So for want of time, I'm not going to explain it what is a limit cycle in detail, but you can understand that limit cycle is actually referring to a structure that you can see in the state space when there is stable oscillation. A simple example will be, for example, although it is not a limit cycle, it is an example of a sender. If you take your simple harmonic motion, x double dot is equal to minus omega square x, and if you plot your velocity and displacement, which we did in high school or +2, then you will get a closed curve in the x dot space. That is called as a sender. And if it is a nonlinear system, we call it as a limit cycle, because sender, there can be multiple senders like that depending upon your initial condition. But for a nonlinear system, there will only be one such structure in the phase space which will attract all trajectory. So what is happening to the real physical system? Physical system was not having any oscillation till now. Suddenly, when you change the parameter, oscillation is taking place, or there is birth of oscillation. And there is also another kind of Hope bifurcation, which is called as subcritical Hope bifurcation. So I will just show you the pictures for more clarity. That will be easy for you to understand. So let us imagine that we are having a control parameter and we are taking the measure. So what you are doing here is that you are increasing your control parameter and you are reaching what is known as the bifurcation point or the Hope point. What happens there? Your non-oscillatory state becomes unstable and there is birth of oscillation. So whatever that you are seeing here as the curve, it is actually RMS of your oscillations. Okay, so this is RMS of oscillation. So you can see that this increases slowly. Now, as you increase the parameter, the amplitude of oscillations will increase. So the RMS value will also increase. Now, suppose if you want to bring the system back to your non-oscillatory regime, what you have to do is that you just have to reduce the parameter. Then when you reach the same point, you will get back to your non-oscillatory regime. So if you are an operator or think that you are controlling some power grid, so there is something that is going on in your power grid because of which some of the synchrony, some of the generators are going out of synchrony. So there is some oscillation getting set up. So there is something that you have, some unwanted oscillations are coming up. So suddenly you are changing, you are putting your governors or you're using your dampers, you are applying control. So you get back to your previous non-oscillatory state where every generator is in synchrony with each other. So no problem for you. However, there is a worst situation which is called as a subcritical bifurcation or subcritical Hope bifurcation. What happens there is you reach here. the bifurcation point. But as soon as you reach here, again your non-oscillatory state becomes unstable, but there is birth of oscillations at a very high amplitude. So you suddenly jump to the higher branch and you remain in the higher branch. And immediately you can note here, even if you reduce the value like supercritical, you won't come back to your non-oscillatory state. You should reduce it further where you will reach this point. Then only you will get back to your non-oscillatory state. So if some of you are remembering about a bifurcation that we studied, the saddle node bifurcation, you can see here an unstable state and a stable state are coalescing and nothing is here. So you are coming back to your stable non-oscillatory state. Okay, so these are two bifurcations that you can actually observe in many of the mathematical models. And you can see here the first state, this is called as a globally stable state. So here whatever happens, you will remain in the non-oscillatory regime. Second state is called as the bistable state. So you can either remain in the non-oscillatory state or you can remain in the oscillatory state depending upon your initial condition. And third state is called as the globally unstable state, where you will always remain in the oscillatory state. Okay, why it is called unstable? Again, I remind you, because of the engineering parlance. For engineers, we call it as unstable. Now, come back to this bistable regime. That is, if you just go back to the bistable regime, you can see here, if you are doing linear analysis, so just to compare the linear analysis with this, if you are doing linear analysis, that means eigenvalue based analysis, your eigenvalue will be negative, or it will be in the left half plane till you reach this control parameter value 0. So your eigenvalue analysis will tell that even if you are in the bistable state, it will tell that you are in the linearly stable regime, which is correct. Linear analysis, it is correct. You are in the linearly stable regime. But the problem is, now you see there are two valleys here. So I told you earlier. So if you are in the valley, this is the basin of attraction of this valley. That is, anything below this red line, you will come back to your original state, non-oscillatory state. Anything above, you will go to the other state, other oscillatory state, which we do not want. But the problem in this case is, this bistable regime, what happens if I kick you such that you will go through this red line, then you may end up becoming unstable. So although your linear analysis predicted that you are in the stable regime, you can end up in an unstable regime because of this bistable. Okay, so keep this in mind. So now going further, these transitions are difficult, and the nonlinear systems are also capable of exhibiting what is known as chaos. So chaos is famously, it is called as the butterfly flapping its wings. So people use and abuse this quote for many reasons. And this is the reason why we always blame our weatherman. So we say that whenever they say there is a rain, there will be a rain, we will not take the umbrella. And when they say that there is no rain, we will take the umbrella. Okay, so then you have to just see these equations, seemingly very simple equations, nonlinear equations. The main point here is, I am just skipping through most of the details. So here, what is more important here is sensitivity to initial conditions. So you have two trajectories that are coming up here with respect to time. So this is the original picture from the Lawrence notebook. So now copy of the original picture, of course. So you can see that these two trajectories will trace closely with each other up to a time. After that, they start diverging because there is a very slight difference in their initial condition. This is known as sensitive dependence on initial condition, and power systems are capable of showing this chaos also. So this is a very good introduction from which I took the previous two quotes. So you can just go through this book if you are interested. Now the million-dollar question for all of those who are patiently waiting: can I observe all this in power system? The answer is yes. So this is the famous swing equation. So you can have the classical version of 2D, or you can also take this E as a state variable and make it as a third order equation. So you have different order equations for your generator models, etc. So even if you take the classical second order equation, so the classical second order equation is just like you are having a torque here. So it is just like the Newton's second law, T is equal to I alpha kind of equation that we are writing. So you are I alpha, and there is a damping term, that is delta is your angle, and delta dot is the omega. and m is your moment of inertia, d is the damping, pm is the mechanical power, and p is your electrical power. And if they are not in the steady state, if there is a difference, then that will act as a driver. So this is actually, this SMIB or your single machine infinite bus is actually representing a forced oscillator. So if you do your analysis for this forced oscillator, then you can see that much similar to what we saw earlier. If you start increasing your PM, you will be there in the lower branch, that is the forward path, whatever is written, that inverted triangles, blue triangles. And as soon as you reach a critical value, you will be shifted to the upper branch, which is the oscillatory branch. Now you will continue there. And in order for example, if it is a real-time system and if you want to bring it back, there is no point in reducing PM just by the same value. You have to reduce it further and further and further, and you have to reach here, and then you will come back here. So you can see here now that there is a large bistable regime that is there, wherein your system's stability is going to depend upon your initial condition. And one thing that you can observe, if you are very keen in observation, that you don't see an unstable state separating these two branches, because usually in your numerical analysis or in your experiment, you won't get that unstable state because your system will never stay there. So this upper triangle, it is also stable oscillatory state. This lower blue one is the stable non-oscillatory state. Now, going further, you can see, you can plot what is known as the phase space. So you can see that in the bistable state, what will happen is that if your initial condition is lower, you will come back to your fixed point. If your initial condition is higher, you will go to your limit cycle. Now, going further, if it is a third order model, then in the third order model, you can also see what is known as the period doubling route to chaos. So if you take omega and delta, this is what the limit cycle I was talking about. Once you change the parameter, it will increase further. And then you can see two loops there, that is called as period doubling. Now again, if you increase it, it will become more and more like this, and it becomes a chaotic orbit. And this is not a periodic chaos. That means your chaos is repeating. So all this is possible in your power system model. So when you are applying the linear approximations, you are missing all these dynamics which can be seen in a real system. Now the question is, this is fine with the model, but how do I deal with a high dimensional real system? If it is a real-time system, I just have data, so I don't have an equation. How will I deal? The answer is what is known as phase space reconstruction. So I will very quickly introduce this. So this means you don't know the state space, you don't know what is the real equation, so you don't know the state space variables. So now you have to recreate the state space. How will you do that? You will need two quantities which are known as optimum time delay and minimum embedding dimension. So what you do there is you use the time series of any observable. You are getting voltage or you are getting angle, you get that observable. Using that observable, you are delaying that time series vector and creating the other state space variables. And you will have to decide what is the amount of delay that you should give and how many state space variables you should have in order to represent the system. So these two are otherwise known as, one is known as time delay, another one is known as the embedding dimension. So I will just take you to the example. So I think Sujitra will do that in a more proper way, because I do not have time. If I keep explaining this, you will lose that time. So that's why I'm skipping through. So now you can see this is the reconstructed attractor, which is the Lorentz attractor. So you saw the Lorentz equation, and in my title slide, you saw the Lorentz attractor, wherein we plotted x and y and z. Now instead of x, y, and z, suppose that I have access only to x of t. Then what I am doing, from x of t, I am creating another vector x of t plus tau, and I am creating yet another vector x of t plus 2 tau. So the question is, what is this tau? Answer comes from the optimum time delay. The second question is, how do I know that how many x of t's I should create? That is x of t plus tau, x of t plus 2 tau, x of t plus 3 tau. Who will decide that? That is coming from minimum embedding dimension. So using those two, I can recreate my phase space. So the same approach we can use for a real system as well. That's what I'm trying to tell. Now you can see the real system in bifurcation. So I'm just skipping again this point. So now you people remember that during the pandemic, start of the pandemic, we all had one day where people were switching off lights, and there was a good like amount of debate and discussion over how it will affect our grid stability. So what is that all about? And whether that is going to take our country into a blackout? That was the question. Now, this is about not about just change, but it is about rate of change. So the problem was the whole users, they are just going to shut down their usage and suddenly they are going to increase. So the sudden decrease or sudden increase, that means the rate at which the load is going to come or load is going to be taken away from the system. Will it influence? The answer is it is going to be more and more problematic if you have a renewable energy. So that answer is yes. So the transformation can occur not because of parameter, but also because of change of parameter. So I will just take you. So I am again sorry, I'm not going to explain all this to you. So anybody who is interested, please do mail to me so I can interact to you through mail. So these are very interesting topics. So if you are interested, you can do. I will just tell you very in a simple fashion how to understand this. So let us say that you have a subcritical bifurcation. So you have the SMIB model. So you are having this blue dot is representing your non-oscillatory state. This circle is representing your oscillatory state. So we want to remain in the blue dot always. So this in between circle is the unstable state, which we never saw in the diagram. What is happening now? Your initial condition is here. So you are in the basin of attraction of the fixed point. So what is expected? You should come here. But suppose that your rate of change of parameter is so fast, what will happen? The rate at which this unstable limit cycle is reducing its radius may be higher than the rate at which you are coming down to your fixed point. Because of that, you will be out of this fixed unstable limit cycle, and that will lead you to reach that stable oscillations, otherwise instability. So here you are still in the bistable regime, but you reach instability. So this picture will tell you more. So you see here R dot is equal to mu R into AR cube plus BR power 5. So here one difference is that this mu is also now time dependent. D mu by dt is C. This is the reality. All real systems parameter will change with respect to time, and there is a rate at which the parameter will change. Suppose you are in this initial condition. So according to whatever that we have learned before, I should come down to this state. That is the bottom state, I should come down, right? But that will happen if my rate is very low. Suppose if I increase the rate, then what I will do? I will not come down, although I am in the basin of attraction, initially in the basin of attraction of the stable non-oscillatory state, I will cross the hill and I will go to the other stable state. So this is called as the rate dependent tipping, and we were able to demonstrate this in an SMIB. So in our recent paper, we demonstrated this, and we showed that this novel route to tipping mechanism is possible. Okay, so this is what we showed. So I have almost reached the end of my presentation. So I hope I kept the timing, but at the cost of rushing through. So I apologize with all of you for that. And Sujitra will be explaining this more. So you can see here, what we are doing here is that we are just ramping up our PM. So because of ramping this P value, what is happening is that our system suddenly goes to oscillation, although initially it was in the bistable state and in the basin of attraction of the fixed point. So this is again the same thing with our system. So you can see the pink line, this is coming down, whereas the yellow line, it is crossing the red boundary and going to the upper branch. Okay, so now to conclude, I would say that most of you may think that all of these are models. So what is the point? Yes, all models are wrong, but some models are useful. And why they are useful? Because the only way for us to know a complex system is to modify it and see how it behaves. So in order to understand a real system, we need to have models, and these models we need to perturb and understand what is the dynamics, and then we should take the data from the real system and confirm. Okay, so I hope all of you enjoyed the session. So please do post your questions in the chat, and you can, I will try to answer those questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful session.
So there is one question One question. Yeah, just one question. I will just try to answer that question. It is showing that if you have many conditions, how will we plot in a 2D graph? Very good question. We cannot plot it in a 2D graph at a time. For example, if you have a system wherein many state space variables are there, then you need to create a bifurcation diagram for each of them, and then you will create what is known as a stability boundary for different state space parameters, so that you can do. So I will just stop sharing my screen.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
We will now break for 5 minutes and rejoin at 3:35 p.m.
Yes, Vivek. Yeah, I will be here. I will be here.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Suchitra, I have made you a presenter. You can check your slides. Yeah, it's visible. Yeah, it's visible.
Can we resume?
Yeah. Sintra, you can start. Yeah.
So, good afternoon all. Today I am here to give a tutorial session on nonlinear stability analysis of power system. I am a PhD scholar under Dr. E.A. Gopalakrishnan at Center for Computational Engineering and Networking at Amrita School of Engineering, Coimbatore. So, moving on to the overview of my presentation, I will be presenting quasi-static bifurcation analysis in a power system model. In this section, I will be dealing with rate-dependent bifurcations in power system and rate-dependent tipping in power system, which Sir has explained theoretically. And next, I will be covering the phase-space reconstruction of dynamical systems. So the first one is how to perform quasi-static bifurcation analysis in power system model. So in order to perform this quasi-static bifurcation analysis or bifurcation analysis for that matter, we have to implement the model mathematically in any of the softwares. So this is the case that I have done because I was not having data. So if we are dealing with the real-time data wherein data is available, we can skip the first step. That is, we are provided with data and we don't need a mathematical model for generating the data. So the first step is to procure data. So we have to get this data, but we have to ensure that we are having sufficient data. That is, if we are having data corresponding to some variations given to the system, that is some is my voice okay now? Because I have got some request.
Yeah. It's audible. It's audible. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the first step is to ensure that we have data corresponding to our region of interest. That is, if we are having data from a physical system, for example, if we are having data from a maybe a sensor, maybe a temperature sensor or something like that, and we are here to check the output of that temperature sensor. That is, we are tweaking some control inputs and we are checking the output, that is the temperature value of that sensor. So for that, we have to ensure that for each tweak that we are going to apply, that is for each control input, there should be data available. So once that is the second point, capture response to each control input. Then we have to ensure that if we are getting data of maybe if we are getting instead of a digital display, if we are getting a time series, something like that, we have to compute the RMS value of average value or whichever value that we are interested, we have to compute that. Then we have to capture this data until we cover our area of interest. For example, if in the case of a temperature sensor or whatever sensor that is of the matter, say if we are varying our control parameter maybe from 10 to 20, we have to get the data for the control parameter value of 10, then for the control next value up to control parameter value reaching 20. Now, the next step that we have to make sure that if we observe any changes in the response, note down the point and we observe that response and fine tune our measurement around that point where this sudden change in the response happens. Then we have to make sure that we have to capture sufficient values even after sudden transition or jump in the response. Then we have to conduct a numerical analysis for a different set of operating environment to check whether the forward and reverse paths overlap. I think maybe first 3 or 4 points may be clearer to you, and the last few points maybe you might be having a difficulty in understanding. So I will try to explain that with the help of a MATLAB board. So then it will be easy for you to understand. I think my screen is visible to you now.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. This is a third order SMIB model. So the first state variable is delta, second state variable is omega, and the third state variable is E. And I have implemented that SMIB model in this function file, and this val1, val2, this last 3 lines represents the dynamics of the single machine infinite bus in the third order model. Okay. So what I have done after that is I am trying to give some initial conditions to the system. That is, this y0 is the initial conditions. That this initial condition represent, in this code, we have shown that we are dealing with 3 state variables, that is delta, omega, and E. And we will be giving an initial condition y0 for this delta, omega, and E. That is, this is delta 0, omega 0, and E0 value. This was referring to some initial conditions in the engineering system. Now we will be trying to get the response of this state variables for the variations of the control parameter. So I have tried to get the values through a Runge-Kutta fourth order integration. So what I have, here what I am trying to plot is trying to plot the bifurcation diagram. Here I am trying to vary the control parameter, which is the mechanical power. You can see that PM is the mechanical power here, and initially I am giving a value of 0.4. You can give this value from 0.3 to 0.3 to 1. That is the area of interest that I have here. I have mentioned in the fourth bullet that capture values until we cover our area of interest. So what I am going to do is I will be varying this control parameter, that is this mechanical power, from 0.3 to 1, which is my area of interest. Then I will be capturing the response of the state variables, that is delta, omega, and E. So for this PM value, I will be solving this system and actually this graph is not able to see. Okay, I will resolve that. However, we can see that this y2 value, this y2 is nothing but this omega value, and in the code I have given, I wanted to procure the RMS value of y2 from n by 2 to n. I needed this RMS value from n by 2 to n because if there are some oscillations, I wanted to get the RMS value. If it comes to an asymptotic value, this code doesn't make any sense because it will be having the same value. So for that matter, I have procured this RMS value of y2, that is omega for PM is equal to 0.3, which is 0.0012. Now I have to note down this value and then I have to increment this PM value. I am incrementing this PM from 0.3 to 0.4, and now I am running this code again. And you can see that this y2 value, let me sort out this issue, 2 seconds. I'm sorry. So, I mean, here we can see this state variable omega and the asymptotic value, that is the RMS value of this state variable omega is displayed here. This is the time series of omega and this is the phase space of the omega. From the phase space, we can see that this omega value comes to this fixed point. So what we have to do is corresponding to this PM value, we have to note down this omega value. Now we are going to increment this PM to 0.5. Now I am going to run this code again. Now only we can see that in this Y2 value, that is this omega value is somewhat near to 0 and this system is coming to this 0 value in the asymptotic state and the phase space of the system shows a fixed point. Now I am going to increment that again.
Sujitra,
Yes, sir.
Sujitra, in the phase space plot, what is your x-axis and y-axis?
Delta and omega, isn't it visible?
Okay.
Is it visible now?
Yeah, no, it's a bit small. That's why. No, now it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, here also we are not provided with any new information for this PM value of 0.6. Now we are again going to increment this PM value from 0.6 to 0.7. And what happens here is this omega starts to oscillate. That is the asymptotic value. We can see that the omega starts to oscillate after we cross the time instant of maybe 6.23 seconds. That is the asymptotic value of this omega, that is angular velocity, is oscillations, and the phase space of the system shows isolated closed trajectories, which indicates the presence of limit cycle. So this was what I was referring to the point earlier in the PPT. That is, if we observe any change in the response, note down the point and fine tune our measurement around that point. Because we have seen that there was no change in the phase space and in the time series up to PM value of 0.6. So what happens is when we increase PM from 0.6 to PM7, suddenly the time series shows limit cycle oscillations. That is, time series shows oscillations and phase space shows limit cycle. So we have to fine tune around that point. So for that, what I do is I will give PM value to 0.62 and then conduct. Then also we are coming to this fixed point. So now I am again incrementing this PM value. So what happens is, again at 0.64, it is more or less coming to the same, and the fixed point is, the system is having a fixed point. Now I am giving 0.66. So what happens is at about 0.66, the system jumps to this limit cycle oscillations from the fixed point. So instead of giving discrete steps from 0.6 to 0.7, we have to fine tune around the value of 0.6. So after that, this is the point that I was referring earlier in my PPT. We have to fine tune around that point where this sudden transition occurs. Then the next point is capture sufficient values even after sudden transition or jump with the response. So for that, what we have to do is we have to give more increments in this PM, because I have already given PM is equal to 0.7. So now I am giving PM is equal to 0.8. So then also, it is not strange that we are dealing with oscillations here, and we just have to note down this RMS value of this angular velocity. And then, we can see that earlier this RMS value was somewhat around 2.7. Here it is somewhat around 3.6. That is, the RMS value keeps on increasing. Now I am again going to increment this PM value, and here this RMS value of omega, that is the angular velocity, is 4.2. So I am earlier I have mentioned that I am planning to keep on incrementing this PM value up to 0.3 to 1. So I have given PM is equal to 1. So, and I have noted this value of angular velocity, that is 4.7. So this is the forward path or the first step for performing this bifurcation analysis. So until now, we have conducted every step instead of the last bullet, capture sufficient values even after sudden transition or jump in the response. So then last entry was to conduct a numerical analysis for a different set of operating environment to check whether the forward and reverse paths overlap. So what we refer to this by this statement is, we have given an initial value of delta, omega and E as 0.3, 0.9 and 0.95. Instead of that, we are giving a different initial condition. Here I am giving 1.5, 1.8 and 1. This is nothing but, we know that earlier upon crossing this 0.66 value of mechanical power, this angular velocity is having RMS value of maybe greater than 2.7. So we are giving some initial condition nearer to that limit cycle. That is, earlier sir has said that in a dynamical system, there will be having stable states, and some of the stable states will be desirable and some of them will be undesirable. So what we are going to check is, we are dealing with a different operating environment, and we are checking what happens to the system response if we are picking an initial condition referring to that oscillatory states. For that, we are changing these initial conditions, and we are just doing this bifurcation. That is, we are just decrementing this PM value from 1 to 0.3. So we have done this. We are given with this phase space and with this time series. It is nothing but oscillatory time series, and we are provided with this RMS value of angular velocity. We just note down that, and again we try to decrement that 0.9. Now instead of steps of 0.1, I just skipped one step. So at 0.7, again it is having oscillations. Now I give input to 0.6. So what happens is, earlier at the value of 0.6, there was no oscillation. The system in the phase space, this system was coming to this fixed point, whereas here it is isolated closed trajectory, and the system, the time series of the system shows limit cycle oscillations, and this RMS value is revolving somewhat around this 2.5 value. Now I am trying to decrement this value. We are giving this PM value is 0.5 and running this code again. Then also we are getting this oscillatory time series and limit cycle in the phase space, and this RMS value has somewhat decreased to 1.9. Now I am decrementing that again. Then also the same, that is oscillatory time series and the limit cycle in the phase space, and a decrement in this RMS value. Do that again. But here the system asymptotic value comes to this 0 value, that is asymptotic value is 0, and the phase space of the system is limit cycle oscillations. So what I have done is, I have given a sudden decrement from 0.4 to 0.3. So instead of that, I am checking some in between value 0.35. And at 0.35 also, it is somewhat coming to this asymptotic state value. So I have to fine tune that again. So at 0.37 also, it is coming to this asymptotic value. At 0.38, it is not coming to this fixed point. It is phase space is stuck in the limit cycle. So at the point of 0.38, it is making a reverse transition. So this is shown in the presentation. That is what we have done here is we are incrementing this mechanical power value from 0.3 to 1. And we are capturing this RMS value of the angular velocity. And we can see that at 0.66, the system makes transition from the stable fixed point to oscillatory solution. And this sudden transition is indicated as the point PMH. And here the system is transiting, and we are capturing sufficient value after crossing this PMH value by incrementing this mechanical power. And then we at this value, we are trying to change the operating environment of the system, and we are trying to give decrements to this mechanical power and capture the RMS values of the angular velocity. And we are getting this red inverted triangles. And we can observe that even after crossing this PMH value, the system is not getting this fixed point solution, and the system goes far beyond that point and makes a reverse transition only at around this 0.4 to this lower stable state. So this is how I plot this bifurcation diagram. So I think you are clear with how to plot this bifurcation diagrams. So 1 second. So here in this bifurcation diagram, we can see a pink curve which demarcates the lower stable state from the upper stable state. I have denoted it as unstable limit cycle. So I have mentioned how to determine this unstable limit cycle in brief. So I will just try to explain. I will just try to explain how to determine the boundary between two basins of attraction. So for this, we have to identify our region of focus. Here, our region of focus is nothing but this region. That is, here we are provided with, we are in this region from PM value from 0.4 to 0.68, the system is having two stable states depending upon the initial conditions, because for one initial condition, the system was giving a response of this upper red inverted triangles, whereas for this smaller initial condition, the system was giving this normal triangles in the blue color. So this is our area of interest, because if we are performing a linear stability analysis, we might be getting a solution as the system is stable, whereas the system might not be stable. Depending upon the initial conditions of the system. So for that, we have to identify how to know the basins of attraction of each state. So this for this, we have to identify the region of focus. So we have identified the region of focus as the basin of region of focus as the bistable region. Then I will be fixing a control parameter and vary the initial condition corresponding to the basin of attraction of state 1. Then I will be performing small increments in the initial condition for the cell. I will be performing small increments in the initial conditions for the same control parameter and check how long the system state remains in the basin of attraction of state 1. And I will be noting down the value at which the system transits to the alternate state. So, for making my points clear, I will just demonstrate that with the help of the MATLAB code. So here, I have identified my region of interest as the bistable region. So I will be giving mechanical power input values only within the bistable region. So for initially I am giving this mechanical power input value as PM is equal to 0.45, and I am changing this operating condition to corresponding to that of the fixed point. So for this, sure, I will be giving this y2 value, this angular velocity value will be coming to the asymptotic value of 0. Now what I am doing is I am fixing this mechanical power value of 0.45 and trying to increment this omega value. So instead of 0.9, I have given it as 1. And now I am running this code. Then also I am getting this asymptotic value of angular velocity is 0, and the system gives a fixed point in the phase space. Now I am incrementing that to 1.2 and running the code again. Now also I am getting the same response or similar response with a different value, numerical value. And now I am incrementing that. Now also getting the same response. Same response. Same response. Whereas when I have given this omega value, that is y02 value as 2.3, what happens is we are getting this oscillatory nature in the omega time series, and the phase space shows limit cycle oscillations. So even though we are within this bistable region, that is this PM is equal to 0.45 value, and I am just incrementing this initial condition. At an initial condition value of 2.6, the system starts exhibiting oscillations, and till that value of y0 is equal y0 of 2 reaching this 2.6 value, the system is not showing any oscillations. So this was my first point. Fix a control parameter and vary the initial conditions corresponding to the basin of attraction of state 1. So I have just varied the initial conditions of omega corresponding to the basin of attraction of state 1. Then I have performed small increments in the initial conditions for the same control parameter and check how long the system remains in the basin of attraction of state 1. And now I have noted down the value at which the system transits to the alternate state, which is nothing but 2.6 here. So the next point is repeat the experiments for the entire range of values within our region of focus. So we know that our region of focus is lying between this bistable region. So now I have given this mechanical power value as 0.45. Now I will be incrementing this mechanical power value and I will repeat the experiment. So it is like I will be changing this mechanical power value 0.5 here. Now I will start from my earlier initial condition and I will start increasing this omega value, and I will observe at which omega value the system gives oscillatory solution. So I will make a note of all these values. So then what I will do is repeat the experiment for the initial condition corresponding to the alternate state. Now what I will be doing is I will be covering the entire range of values, that is this mechanical power values within this bistable region, by giving this alternate initial conditions. So for PM is equal to 0.5 I have run this code. So I'm getting this oscillatory solution. It is nothing new. So I am just here, instead of incrementing, I am trying to decrement this angular velocity. So here also the same solution. At 1.1, the system is having oscillations, whereas at 1, the system is not having oscillations. So what we are provided with is, we are given this value of this for one particular PM, that is for one particular, maybe for example, PM is equal to 0.5. We know the value of omega at which the system jumps to oscillatory solution and the system is not having oscillatory solution, that is corresponding to state 1 and corresponding to state 2. Then we will take the mean of values at the verge of transition, which forms the demarcation between the basins of attraction. That is how I have plotted this unstable limit cycle. I hope you are clear how to perform this quasi-static bifurcation analysis. So the next step, next subsection is how to perform this rate dependent bifurcation. For this, we have to vary the control parameter as a function of time and then capture the response, that is the time series, and plot that against the quasi-static bifurcation diagram to observe the change in the point of transition. For that, I'm going to that code. So earlier in our code, we are given this t and y as the arguments, whereas here we are giving this control parameter as a change in value here, and we are giving the same dynamics here in the function file, and we are trying to solve that for two different initial conditions. And initially, I am giving initial value that corresponds to the stable fixed point, and I am varying this mechanical power value from 0.3 to 0.9 in steps of this, and I am trying to solve this. So I will run the code and show you. So we can see that this is the variation. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mark the x and y axis here. I have earlier mentioned that this mechanical power varies from 0.3 to 1. So the x axis is nothing but Tm and the y axis is the response, that is angular velocity. So we can see that we are getting the response of omega, that is angular velocity from 0 to 100 instant. So we can, 1 second. We can see that here the transition to the oscillatory state happens at around 0.77, whereas in the quasi-static bifurcation analysis, this transition was happened at 0.66. That is, what happens is, if we perform our variation of control parameter as a function of time, whichever be the control parameter, there is a delay observed in the system. This was seen in some of the other dynamical system as well, and we have reported the same in a conference paper. So, and the next result or next subsection that I had mentioned earlier is rate dependent tipping that is observed in power systems. For that, to show, that is, this is the rate dependent tipping observed in power system. That is only how to observe a transition from one state to alternate state purely due to the variation of the control parameter. So for that to explain, I will go to the code. So in this code, I have given some initial condition. That was dealt earlier. So what I have given here is, I have given one mechanical power value for this PM2 is 0.42 for 100 seconds, 100 instance, and I am giving this variation of this mechanical power from 0.42 to 0.64. I am specifically sticking on to this region for the mechanical power variation because we have to ensure that we are within the bistable region. We have identified from our quasi-static bifurcation diagram that our bistable region lies somewhat around 0.4 to 0.66. So I have to restrict our mechanical power variation within this bistable region so that the system is not showing any response since the system has crossed this bistable regions. For that matter, I have fixed this mechanical power value variation within 0.42 to 0.64. And after that, I am fixing my variation, fixing my mechanical power at the value of 0.64. So I'm running this code and you can see that till 100th instant, I will be giving this mechanical power value as 0.4. And now I am performing this variation of this mechanical power value. And after that, I am keeping, that is fixing this mechanical power value at 0.64. And we can see that corresponding to this 0.42 value, the system, the response of the system, that is omega, is coming down. That is, the system is showing a decaying response, whereas due to the increment, that is the rate dependent variation of this control parameter, the system is moving to this oscillatory solution and the system ends up in oscillatory solution, and the phase space depicts the same, showing a limit cycle oscillations. So I have covered the first section which covers this rate dependent bifurcation and this rate dependent tipping. So the next section is, the next section that I have to deal with is how to perform phase space reconstruction of dynamical system. As the system that I have shown now is, I was provided one more result I have to show. I forgot that in between. So I was just trying to plot this variation of this angular velocity against the quasi-static bifurcation, and we can see that the yellow curve, that is initially in the plot, we can see that the system was showing a decaying response, and after that, due to this rate dependent variation, the system goes upon ending with limit cycle oscillation. This is the scenario captured here, that is the system was trying to show a decaying response, whereas this, it reaches a value PM star at which the system response grazes this unstable limit cycle and the system ends up with limit cycle oscillation. Whereas for a lower initial condition, the system is not going to this unstable limit cycle or not grazing this unstable limit cycle, and hence the system ends up with fixed point in the phase space. This is what sir has shown in the two circles, where one in between circle is marked as this unstable limit cycle. Here, this unstable limit cycle here refers to this red dotted curves, and this two trajectories corresponding to two different initial conditions are shown in yellow and pink lines. So the next section is how to reconstruct a phase space. Here, this section will be useful for those who are having data, because for those who are having data, they might not be having the mathematical model, and how to develop develop intuitions from the mathematical model. For that, we have to input the time series. Now we have to determine the time delay for creating the delay vectors, because for those who are having data might be provided with either one data or one time series. So we might not be having a knowledge of how many sets of time series should be necessary for plotting a phase space or plotting a reconstructed phase space, or to reconstruct a phase space. For that, we have to determine the time delay and from that time delay, and after determining that time delay, we will be creating delayed vectors from a single time series, that is the input time series that is available with us now. Now, we will be determining the minimum embedding dimension, that is what is the dimension required for this for reconstructing the phase space. Now I will be going to the code. For this section, I have tried to give the dynamics of the Lorentz attractor that Saf has already explained. the dynamic section, dx1, dx2, dx3 shows the dynamics of the system, and I will run the first section. I think you can see the state space of the phase space of the system. So after that, this phase space shows the evolutions of the variables in the evolutions of the variable. So the next section is to get the mutual information. From this, we can identify the time delay for constructing the delayed vectors. So I will be running this section. So from this average mutual information, we can see that the first dip, that is, we can see this is the average mutual information, and here this is in the x-axis, the lag in the time steps. So we can see that this mutual information goes decreasing and comes to a minimum at value of 10. This is the first minimum value, and we will note this as the first minimum value for giving input as the time delay. Now we have to determine this minimum embedding dimension. So in order to do this average mutual information, I am calling a function AMI, which is given here. And don't worry, we will be giving all these codes in the Git page, so it will be available to you all. So after this, we'll be finding out the minimum embedding dimension. For finding out the minimum embedding dimension, I'm going to check, I will be giving this minimum time delay as the input vector. This is CAO is the function for finding out this minimum embedding dimension. And I will be giving this 10, which I have found out from the earlier graph as the input. And now I will be checking up to 10 dimensions. So we can give whatever dimension we like. If we are not having any idea of data, we can keep on increasing this. But here we are dealing with a Lorentz system, and it is a third order system. So I'm restricting my search to 10th dimension. So I will be running this section. So we can see that the dimension somewhat saturates at around 6. After that, there is no change happens. If we are interested, after 8, there is no change. It is somewhat decreasing actually. So we can restrict our search within 5 or something like that. So I will be giving that, or we can give 5. I had given earlier 3 because I know that the system is Lorentz system and it requires only 3. So we have got the reconstructed phase space. So this is similar to our earlier phase space, but it is created from the delayed vectors generated from a single time series. So these are the things that I was supposed to cover. These are the references. Thank you. So I will go on.